Great morning, great morning, great morning. It is 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the It's About You radio show on WDRB Media, the voice of the community. I'm your host, Maurice McDonald, and as I say every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, it is an honor for me to have this platform to share this amazing information designed to get into your heart through your ears and hopefully through your legs, get you to move to be the very best you can possibly be. And this platform, as I said earlier, is something that I do not take lightly. It's a privilege and an honor to have this platform to share some information with some amazing guests. As you know, I don't always do all the talking, nor do I know everything, but the idea is to share information when I do know with people in the field who are experts in their fields and from every walk of life to be able to share some amazing information. And because I know it's 8 o'clock in the morning, someone is having breakfast, someone having that last cup of coffee, or you may be at the office already, listening on the radio, on your internet, on the computer, however. Listen, I hope I can say something today that can enlighten you. But because it's 8 o'clock, I always give this morning quote of the day, the morning quote of the day. And one of the quotes today basically comes from the motivational speaker Les Brown. Les Brown talks about, he says that if you get knocked down in life, land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. Yes, Les Brown said that. If you get knocked down in life, which we all will at some point in time, get knocked down by something emotionally, something financially, something spiritually, whatever happens, if you get knocked down, he says, try to land on your back. Because I love that part. Many people lay there on their back and they will whine and complain. But we're saying today, and Les Brown is saying, if you land on your back and if you can look up, he says you can get up. And it's important that you do get up each and every day. Get up each and every day, overcoming the obstacles, overcoming the hurdles, the setbacks, temporary setbacks that look like permanent setbacks, but they're temporary if you want them to be. Keep pushing through, keep grinding, because nothing is given to anybody who just sits back and complain and whine and live in Hopeville. I hope this don't happen to me. I hope this don't. Things happen to all of us. It rains and sunshine on the just and the unjust. All people go through some issues. Some survive better. And if you need to get help talking to somebody, we always talk about doing that. So that is your morning quote of the day, brought to you by MauriceMcDonald.net. Go to MauriceMcDonald.net and learn all about your amazing microbiome health, your gut health, because all disease begins in the gut. Go there and look at that amazing product, P84, to help you with those gut issues, to help you be better. All organic products from all around the world. So that is our morning quote for the day. And I want to do a little recap about last week. I've started a series talking about forgiveness. Yeah, last week was the first show we had about forgiveness, and I talked a little about what forgiveness is and sometimes the benefits of forgiveness, and realize it's not easy to do at times, and understanding just what it is. And I said it was going to be a series, so I kicked it off, but I've got some guests that will be coming the next couple of weeks to share their thoughts about it, and the people that I've chosen are people who I think are really deal with forgiveness from a faith-based perspective, and authors of books as well. Lots of different interesting categories, former educators and those types of things as well. So we're going to be diving into this topic about forgiveness. So today, my guest is someone I've known, I guess, nearly all my life, obviously, but he's also my first cousin as well, but he happens to be a ordained pastor as well. And so obviously from a spiritual perspective today, but he also was an educator and, working in the school system with children in high school for years. And I believe he coached track and a lot of other things, and is an author of several books. And so just like anybody else, I decided, you know what, he needs to be on this show. So today we have Reverend Clennie Wilkins. How you doing, Pastor? You there?
I'm doing well. Yes, I am, cousin. I appreciate the intro, and I gotta tell you, I appreciated that opening quote as well. I like that. If we can look up, we can get up. I love that. I'm gonna have to steal that one from you.
Yeah, Les Brown. Hey, That's right, Les
Yeah.
Brown, because we all get knocked down. You
Yes,
know,
we do.
and because at the end of the day, there's not one person that doesn't get knocked down. Even the richest person gets knocked down occasionally.
There you go.
And
There you go.
and
But if you
but
can
the
look up, you can get up. I
yeah,
love it.
that's
I love
right. If you can look up, that means you can get up. Because end of the day, and I even think sometimes if you fall on your face, I can push up.
it.
That's a good push up. Push up and turn
That's
over, and
good.
either way, you still get
That's
up.
good. That's good.
Absolutely. I love
One
to
of my
give my
favorites.
yeah.
One of my favorites is anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So
That is so true. That is so powerful, and I always like to give my listeners a morning quote of the day. Because it's 8 o'clock in the morning. We want people to understand that whatever happened yesterday, I get a chance to get a do over. I get a
that's
chance.
awesome.
I get a chance to get things right. you know and this is one of the things I have which is a great segue into this topic of forgiveness, because as you and I have been talking here recently about that, and I told you, what I was doing. I told you I wanted you to be a guest on the show. That word forgiveness, if we look at it, I know what the Bible talks about forgiveness as well, but how do you personally define forgiveness? If you had to put a definition to it, and then we can talk about the spiritual part as well.
Well, I'll say this. I think forgiveness is something that is extremely necessary, but I also think it's something that is extremely misunderstood. I think sometimes we go through situations and we feel like we have forgiven people, when in essence we really haven't. And it is so important for us to understand that forgiveness does not mean just moving on, because a lot of times people will just move on from the situation, but that situation or that impasse is, continues to linger in your mind, and every experience that you have from there sort of comes off of that experience, or sort of gleans from that experience. And so I think when we talk about forgiveness, we talk about the ability to literally get past. I don't want to say get over, because that sounds kind of harsh, but to get past things that have happened, and to be able to reconnect, or to restore things that may have been lost if forgiveness hadn't existed. So I think forgiveness is extremely important. But at the same time, like I said, I think it's completely misunderstood in a lot of ways, and I think there are a lot of things that have been damaged or gone by the wayside for lack of forgiveness. And so I love the fact that you're taking the topic, and I'm praying that folks will be blessed by it.
Absolutely, because as I said, this show I always is designed, as I said in my opening each week, designed to get into your ear and hopefully into your heart, and then into your legs, that you can take action and move
Absolutely.
on what needs to be done. It's not my job to decide what's best for you. That's something that each individual must decide to do, because many times people get stuck. I call it stuck on stupid, and that's what I have been, many times, and thinking that you don't know what somebody did to me, or you don't know what they said about me. You don't know what they came at me at. I know I had a student at the college who came after me, so to speak, in terms of false allegations, wanting to get other students to make comments about me, sexual harassing them. I mean, none of it was based in truth at all. It was just vendetta to try to get me terminated. Now, coming at me hard like that, and it's like this was like a 12-month ordeal, just back and forth on stuff, and I found myself getting, like, oh man, this is so wrong, and but I have to remind myself first and foremost, God's been good to me. Okay, let me start right there, and He's fighting my battles. Okay, and understanding that though she did wrong, I had to operate from forgiveness, and it wasn't something I wanted to do easy. It doesn't, and also forgiveness doesn't mean you got to be around the person all the time.
That's right.
What are your thoughts about some of that?
Well, and let me say this too. I listened to you talk about the situation that you dealt with, and my experience has been that oftentimes when someone is or has done someone else wrong, it has a tendency to grow wings or to spread branches, if you would. And what I mean by that is that we often use the phrase that hurt people, and we get in situations sometimes and we don't really find the root of why it is that someone is hurting or why it is that we're hurting, because we can hurt and hurt somebody else also without even really realizing that that's what we're doing. And so I think oftentimes it is so. I won't even say oftentimes. I think it's important to get to the root of each and every issue. You may have somebody may be dealing with a situation where somebody is mistreating them or doing them a certain way. And when you get to the root of it, you realize that at some point in time in their lives, they were done a certain way, and they're just passing on what was done to them. And so again, hurt people. Or you may be on the flip side of that. You may be in a situation where you were, hurt, or you're bitter about something that happened, and you don't really realize it, and you end up hurting others. Because sometimes we use, when we're hurt, sometimes we use we use aggression as a defense mechanism. We figure sometimes if I can get them first, then I don't have to worry about them getting me. Or if I don't let them get but so close to me, if I cut things off, or if I'm aggressive about shutting down what it is that they're trying to present to me, then I can keep myself from getting hurt again or getting hurt even further, not even realizing that we're actually doing people wrong, or we're actually hurting somebody in the process.
Yes.
And so I think forgiveness. I think when we start talking about forgiveness and we start talking about situations that require forgiveness, I think we have to first look at where the root of the problem really came from. And I think that's what's lost a lot of times. We just look at the surface. It's kind of like the analogy I use a lot of times is, there are some cleaners that we use that are surface cleaners. They make everything look shiny, but they don't really get down into the crevices of what it is that we're trying to clean. But then there are other cleaners that are like industrial type, where they not only give you a clean look and a clean smell, but without a shadow of a doubt that they've gotten down in there. And I think sometimes we have to make sure that we've gotten down into the root of the issue and make sure that things are cleaned out deep down on the inside, as opposed to just kind of glossing over them and making them look good.
Yes, I love that analogy of the cleaner, because you're exactly right. One thing about the industrial cleaner, it's going to cost more.
Exactly.
And it has chemicals in it that's a lot deeper. To go, it knows, like you said, it's getting down on the inside, because I do believe that forgiveness sometimes it runs deep. I know I had mentioned to you about your personal definition of forgiveness, and I know the fact that number one, because you're a man of God, understanding this, but from the biblical perspective, where does I guess forgiveness rank?
I think forgiveness ranks very high. I believe, my belief system allows me to believe that love conquers all, and love is above all. But at the same time, I feel like forgiveness is very high on the ranking, simply because part of loving people is being able to forgive. And I could speak from a pastoral standpoint. It's funny you should ask this question. I was just having this conversation with someone recently, and we were just talking about the process of loving people and the process of dealing with people from a pastoral standpoint. And I don't know why, but I'm led to share it in this manner. From the office of a pastor, from the calling of a pastor, part of that calling is to be able to forgive, because we understand, you're going to pastor folks, you're going to minister to folks who are not always going to do the right thing. And if you're a person who can't forgive, then when folks do things that are not quite right, or you see folks do things that are not lined up with what you're teaching, you can't afford to hold that grudge. You got to love them anyway, and that takes a level of forgiveness. But not only from a pastoral standpoint, but from a standpoint of or a viewpoint of making sure that you're garnering your own relationships to be an example of forgiveness and love and forgiveness, so that others can follow that as well. The Bible talks about being giving and loving. And one of the things that we can give is true love, and that true love is forgiveness. And then if we think about it, if we really take a moment to think about it, the sacrifice of Christ was partially about forgiveness. It was about God being able to put something in place that would allow him to still entertain the thought of us being with him one day, even though we were sinful. So the sacrifice of Christ was about forgiveness. It was about him putting Jesus in place to take on our sins so that we literally could still have the opportunity to come in contact with him when we leave this world. So forgiveness is such a huge part. And God's love comes out of, God's forgiveness comes out of his love for us. And I think we have to be the same way. If we're going to be, especially those believers, the followers of Christ Jesus, I think we have to be the same way. We have to love people enough to forgive them. You said something that was so important a moment ago. You said forgiving somebody doesn't mean you have to be around them. And sometimes we have to realize that we're in a season where maybe we don't need to entertain each other in this moment. And it's not that I don't love you, and it's not even that I don't forgive you. It's just that we both got to get ourselves together and get to that place where we can operate in godly love together. So, forgiveness is just huge.
Yes.
And we've got to learn what it means, and then we got to learn how to practice it. So going back to your analogy, we got to get it in our ears and get it in our hearts. And then we got to walk that thing out. You got to get it in your legs. I love that. So,
yes, walk that thing out. Because, listen, that whole piece about forgiveness, as I said last week, that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about me.
Absolutely.
Because I gave the analogy last week and I did the show. I said that, that unforgiveness is like I'm drinking the poison hoping they get sick. and realizing that this is something I got to do, and I love the fact that things you were saying, because I realized that people who profess to love God or to be godly people or to believe in God, and the basic thing is forgive, and that still the thing is love thy neighbor as thyself, right? And forgiveness is that. And it says, how can you say you love me? Right?
Whom you've never seen.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Who you've never seen.
You can't love the brother and sister you see every day.
And the brother you see every day, you hold a grudge. I think about the neighbors who are arguing over a tree limb is hanging over somebody's yard across the property line. And the leaves fall over there, or they had a branch that fell on their fence, or just something happened. They'll go 8 to 10 years arguing over that and won't talk to each other. Kids go to the same school.
Yeah.
And yet, and both could be going to different places of worship, professing they love God. And yet you ain't forgiving this person for something they did. That the person cut that limb down, and the tree fell on your fence, or if the leaves fell on, just something silly. Because I know as a former officer, I used to go to houses of people with neighbors. There was always something, with neighbors. And yet that one blaming the other and those types of things. But if you think about this, but why do you think that forgiveness is such a difficult process for many people?
I'll come at it from this angle. Forgiveness is a difficult process in this day and age. It's been a difficult process for generations, but I think in this day and age it's increasingly difficult because we live in a society and a generation where because of social media we think we are more communicative, but the truth be told is we're not more communicative. We're just more exposed. And in this day and age, from generation to generation, folks struggle to communicate. And a lot of times, and I'll give you an example. You mentioned that I've worked in the school system. I worked in the school system for many years. And in my many years in the school system, I'm finding that, or I have found, that teenagers struggle to even, draft an email or to write things. And I mean, they write the way they text. Everything's become abbreviated, and everything's become written or posted or placed like it's in a social media post. And so communication is a struggle, has always been a struggle in relationship. But then when you add the fact that social media takes away the interaction of communication. So we no longer have to face each other anymore. And so you find, when we talk about forgiveness, you find that people will struggle to even understand what it is that they need to be forgiven for. And a lot of times, people are interacting, the conversations are back and forth, and they're via text, they're via email, they're via inboxes or social media posts, and it takes away the context of it because there's no humanization in it. And so with the already present struggle to communicate, we add that piece to it, and then we understand that in addition to that, a lot of times because we don't communicate, the lack of communication causes us to be put in a position where we may harm somebody or hurt somebody's feelings or vice versa, and because we're not even communicating, we don't even realize it. Some people are hurt and need to be forgiven or need to extend forgiveness, and they don't even realize that they've even done anything simply because there's no communication involved. People now just kind of say something. They just say it and they leave it out there, and some people are offended by it and don't even realize that it wasn't intended for them, or other people will see it and not even realize that someone took it the wrong way. And so I think the lack of communication really feeds the inability to be forgiving.
Yes. Oh, that was a mouthful right there, because as I hear you, I think about the times that when I've harmed somebody else. It was easier for me to recognize when I was harmed, but not when I was the offender. Even though, as you said, I may not have intentionally meant to harm, but nonetheless, I did. And then the idea of, we want to be forgiven, but sometimes people, like you said, because of social media, because now this is a me society, especially in our Western culture. I have the right to feel how I want to feel, and I don't have to, or as I say, people can be what I call email gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
They can send a social media gangsters. I can post something ugly, and I can do all those kind of things, and I going back to school again. I have students who can send nasty emails, and haven't gotten all the facts about things, because when it's easier, if you do, why do you just come talk to me? Right. And you know where my office is, those kinds of things. But like you said, sometimes there's that lack of communication, and that leads to a lot of harboring of feelings, things of that nature, and we sometimes don't take the time to do it, and also I think in a timely manner. Because sometimes people, they can hold that unforgiveness 6 months, 7 months, 6 years, or and just harming on it, and it stays there. And in a moment, I want to tackle that whole point. But for those who just joined, we're here on WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and it is the It's About You radio show. I'm your host here, and today the topic is talking about forgiveness. What it is, because last week, I started this off with forgiveness, and today we have Pastor Clennie Wilkins in the studio with us, and we're talking about that unforgiveness, what it is, and why is it difficult for people to ask for forgiveness or to offer forgiveness, and people come have a conversation about it. We've been talking here a little bit, defining what it is, and why it's so difficult for people to talk about it at this time. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Did you know all disease begins in the gut? It's true. Your gut is the foundation of your entire health. When it's balanced, your body thrives. But when it's out of balance, everything from fatigue, weight gain, mood swing, and chronic illness begins. Your gut isn't just about digestion. It's home to trillions of bacteria that affects your immune system, your energy, and your emotions. The good news is there's P84. 84 fruits and vegetables organically grown all over the world into an amazing product designed to help you to feel better, designed to help you thrive and win. Simply go to MauriceMcDonald.net. That's MauriceMcDonald.net to learn all about P84 and get it in your system today. That's MauriceMcDonald.net and learn all about your gut microbiome. We're back, guys, here on WDRB Media, the voice of the community, for It's About You radio show, each and every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we just finished the first segment talking about forgiveness, how it was personally defined by my guest here, Pastor Clennie Wilkins. And also we talked about why is forgiveness so difficult for many people. So now we want to take a little turn and go into the emotional and the psychological insight of it. For example, what happens emotionally when someone holds on to resentment or anger? So what do you think about that?
I think that's a very difficult situation to be in. It's so important, and you mentioned previously, I believe, that forgiveness is as much, if not more, about you yourself as it is about the person who you need to forgive. Bitterness can be, such a huge part of this whole thing. We can get to the place where we hold on to things and we get, spiteful and we get bitter, and that bitterness can eat you from the inside, literally. And so you get to the point, and I ask your listeners to really consider this. Consider the energy that you put into being bitter or into being, to holding a grudge against someone else. And I, admittedly, in my youth, I can probably say that I may have entertained some of those thoughts, but I work very hard now to make sure, this is me personally, I work very hard to make sure that if there's something I don't like or something that somebody has done, I work very hard to make sure that it's not something that engulfs me, not something that consumes me, because unforgiveness can consume you, and it'll have you doing things that are not productive. It'll have you doing things that are counterproductive to the things that you're trying to accomplish in life. There's a place in Scripture where it says, "Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, think on these things." And so it's important that we be positive in each and every aspect of our lives. And if that means that, somebody has done me wrong, but the positive spin I'm going to put on it is that rather than holding that against them, I'm going to pray for them and I'm going to move on and make sure that I stay on my course. I also got to say to my believers and those folks who are really pressing towards the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus, we've also got to understand that Satan will very easily throw things your way to distract you, and forgiveness or unforgiveness, I should say, can very easily be a distraction, and you'll find yourself with goals and plans and ideas about what you want to do with your life, and get distracted by the fact that somebody has done you wrong, or somebody has done something that you didn't like, and get distracted and get pulled completely away from your own focus. So unforgiveness can be extremely damaging. I'll give you this last point before I close my mouth here. But I also think that it's important that we understand what the Bible says about grace. And, the Bible says over in Ephesians somewhere, it talks about, us being extended a level of grace, each one of us being extended a level of grace. And we live in a society now where the general belief is cancel culture. We think that when somebody does something, we're supposed to just cancel them from everything. And it's done in the celebrity world, and it's done, if we're honest with ourselves, it's done in our individual circles as well. But we have to understand that we can't just cancel somebody or completely delete somebody's existence just because we don't like or we don't agree. But we have to extend some grace, because oftentimes the lack of grace will cause bitterness and cause a deeply rooted unforgiveness. That'll just put us in a place where we're not only holding something against somebody else, but we're holding ourselves hostage. And I'm just not willing to allow my mind and my spirit to be in a personal prison just because somebody else doesn't agree with me or somebody else doesn't do what I want them to do. I'm not willing to do that. I think we have to stay with God and continue to walk with God. And if we're not in agreement with something or not agreement with somebody, then I think we have to pray about it. And I always tell folks, when you're praying, don't just pray that God fix somebody else, but pray for your own mindset too, because there are two sides. There are three sides to every story. There's their side, your side, and then there's the truth. And everybody has their own perspective. And so when we really take the time to think about it, when I'm praying for them, but I'm praying for me too, that my mindset, that I'm not the one that's wrong. Because sometimes we can be in a place of unforgiveness just because our perspective is not the one that's accepted. And so grace is a huge part of it. And I think we have to subscribe to that.
Absolutely. Listen, hey, I hear somebody now who's in the desk shaking their head saying amen to all of that, because that emotional piece, when you hold on to something for a period of time, and based upon sometimes there was some misinformation, what I thought I saw, what I thought they did, and it really wasn't their intent. They had no idea what you're talking about. I give the knowledge a lot of times to my students when I'm, former career as a law enforcement officer. Some of you may have seen a police officer in a local town or your city, and they're at the traffic light next to you in the car, and they put the blue light on and the siren and go through the red light, and they go about 6 blocks down or 2 blocks down and turn the light off. Well, in the natural, what you saw was he or she would just want to run a light, they want to abuse their authority. I got to wait for the light. He or she just broke the law, and they need to be dealt with. Now, what they missed was the radio transaction in the car, because they got assigned to go to a car, and there was another officer that may be 1 block away from where that call came from, and this officer who went through the light is 2 miles away. So which one do you think needs to answer that call? The one that's 1 block away. So he turned the light off and didn't proceed. But if your thought was, I know they did this wrong and I'm going to hold that against them, what you think you see sometimes isn't it. And oftentimes I think we're so tempted to do that. They did that on purpose.
Yeah.
But I don't know their heart. But I assume, and I think that makes it hard for people to forgive other people, because I assumed that's what they meant. And I think the same thing happens in relationships, husband and wives. I assume this, I assume that, or they did that intentional, but maybe they did not. And so therefore, I'm going to hold that against them. And I think that can be very, very difficult as well. But along that same line, we talked about the how does forgiveness, contribute to emotional healing. Because people come through a lot of emotional baggage. We come up. If you live on planet Earth long enough, there's some stuff from childhood and whatever else you may come up through. But people don't think about. Everybody thinks about a scab healing, a physical wound. But what role do you think that forgiveness plays in contributing to emotional healing?
Well, I'll start by throwing this analogy at you. You can't put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, and I think you have to treat the process, or begin to treat the process of emotional healing based on the level of emotional injury. And I think often, I think it all begins at the foundation. I think it all has to go back to the foundation, but a lot of times we don't find the foundation. I think this goes back to what we were saying earlier. A lot of times we don't even bother to find the foundation. It's like dealing with a common cold. Scientifically we understand, or medically we understand, that the common cold comes from a virus, and that virus simply has to run its course. But when we get a cold, we get the sniffles and we get the cough, and we may get a little fever, or we may get a headache, and what we start to treat, we start to take medications, or we start to take actions based on trying to treat the symptoms. And so we're trying to get rid of the cough. We're taking cough medicine, or we're trying to deal with the sniffles, and so we're buying tissues, and we're trying to deal with the headache, so we're taking Tylenol. We're trying to deal with those things. Never really, and most of the time, until it gets really serious. We don't really deal with the virus that caused it in the first place. We just want the symptoms to go away. And
Yeah.
even if the virus is still existent, as long as the symptoms are gone, then we have a tendency to feel like we're okay. Never really understanding that because the virus is still existent, the symptoms can return because the virus is not gone. And I think lack of forgiveness or unforgiveness works the same way. We get past the symptoms. We get to the place where when we see that person, we no longer get to a place where we're angry when we see them anymore, or we no longer get to a place when we see them that we can't speak or we can't be in the same room anymore. And so we think it's all gone until a situation comes up and it triggers a memory or it triggers a thought or it triggers a response. And then we find that the virus was still there and we haven't dealt with it. And so we become even sicker because not only is it still there, but it's been growing and it's been simmering. I don't know why this comes to mind, but I believe it was Langston Hughes that wrote A Dream Deferred, and he talks about what happens to a dream deferred. Oh God, it's been so long I can't even remember exactly what happens to a dream deferred. Does it fester like I can't remember exactly. Does it at some point he gets to the point where does it fester like a sore and then run? And we understand that untreated that thing's just gonna fester. It's just gonna it might scab over, but the scab itself, does it dry up? That's what it is. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or does it fester like a sore and then run? And I think it's important that we understand that thing could scab over, but if something keeps if you got a sore on your leg and it scabs over, but you're wearing something that continues to rub the scab, that scab's gonna peel over and it's gonna start to bleed all over again. And I think sometimes we have to make sure that we're getting healing and we're not just covering things up.
Absolutely. That is so true. I love that whole point because that emotional feeling. There are people right now in pastors' offices and therapists' offices and spending months and months and sometimes years in therapy over something that around some unforgiveness, and it has contributed to their emotional undoing. And you've got people then start to overeating because now we want to medicate. Overeating, over drinking, can't sleep at night, all the other issues, and it boils down to that whole idea of that unforgiveness. And some people say, I'll just I'll forgive, but I won't forget. And every time you see them, you still harboring those feelings. Have you really forgiven, or you just giving lip service? I remember as a child, my grandmother, you do something to somebody, or somebody give you something, they make you say thank you. What do you say? You got to say thank you. And then when you say you did something wrong, they make you apologize. And I really didn't want to forgive. And if I didn't say it the right way, she didn't believe it. So then she took it to another level. I mean, going to that tree to get that switch, because she felt like, you got to learn to forgive. Well, you got certain things. You got to learn to share things I didn't want to do as a child. But I look back at it, that unforgiveness contributes to so many physical and emotional issues that go on within the body, because all of that goes into our mind, our gut, our brain, every being of our bodies. And so oftentimes people are going to doctors, getting treatment for things that are emotional level, and then it goes back into the whole point of forgiveness. And so what are some of your thoughts along that line?
I think along those lines, just like our profession of faith, we have to make sure that forgiveness or apology, I should say that, is not just lip service. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people will make professions of faith just from the mouth, but not from the heart. And I think by the same token, a lot of times people will apologize because they think it's the right thing to do, but still be holding on. So it's like, well, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but I don't really mean it, and that's difficult. And like you said, those things can fester, they can grow, they can create bitterness. They can cause struggles. They can cause all kinds of things, and we don't know what people are dealing with or what they dealt with in their past. We don't know what people have been through. There have been studies that have proven that many of the cases, and I can't say every case because we don't know everybody's situation, but many of the cases where people deal with substance abuse, and many of the situations where where people are participants or aggressors in violent activity, many of those folks have gone through situations and not been. And please help me, or please allow me to make sure that I'm clear. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody. I'm just saying that in many cases people are dealing with backstories, and those backstories have never been resolved and they've never been told, and they fester in those manners. So I'm aggressive towards other folk because I dealt with something and I never got over it, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict because I've dealt with something and I've never gotten over it, and those things are manifesting in my activity. Or like you said earlier, I'm trying to self-medicate. I'm trying to kill the pain or the memory or the trigger of what I'm dealing with. And when we go through that, it's a struggle, and we really have to get true healing and true deliverance, and that starts with forgiveness. I want to share something.
Go ahead.
Maurice, that one of our cousins, and I talk about her often. I give her credit often for being a blessing to me in this season. But one of our cousins had a conversation with me years ago when I was going through something. We ran into each other at Walmart. And she was sharing with me, and we were talking about something. And in the middle of our conversation, she looked at me and she said, "You got to forgive yourself." And so as we talk about forgiveness, oftentimes the first thing that comes to our mindset is forgiving others. But there are times when we do things and we don't forgive ourselves, and those types of instances can have the very same type of effect. We don't forgive ourselves for things that we've done, and we hold grudges against ourselves internally. And because we do that, oftentimes we reach a place of devaluing ourselves. We don't have a very high sense of self-worth. And when you get in that place, not forgiving yourself can be just as damaging as not forgiving somebody else. So I just wanted to make that point. And I give credit to that cousin of ours. I'll tell you who it was. It was our cousin Darlene, one of the twins. She blessed me, and she shared that with me. And it has blessed me. And I saw her recently, and just shared with her. Every time I see her, I think I share with her how that blessed me and allowed me to really consider the fact that we have to forgive ourselves and not hold on to things.
Absolutely, man. Listen, because I tell you, when I think about that whole point about forgiving ourselves, I guess that's where a lot of stuff starts. Because one of the things I did domestic violence counsel for 13 years, a batterer intervention program here, court-ordered program, and many of the men who came through there, the end of the day, the ones who had made amends, they come through the program, they realized they had messed up, they lost their family, or they weren't able to see their partner anymore, or whatever else, but they found themselves not forgiving themselves because it was that whole feeling of guilt and everything else that goes with that. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad you brought that up about forgiving yourself, because after you have changed yourself, or so to speak, gotten things correct, forgiving yourself is a start, because otherwise it leads into a lot of issues. I just happen to have the issue. Just so happens I can talk about this now. Just last night at my church, I had to go. I'm part of the prison ministry, and so having to go in there with those men, and they were talking about that whole idea of forgiving themselves, because they're about to, this is a minimum security, so everybody is 5 years or less, and some are getting out in 18 months, and this anticipation. But many of them said, I got to forgive myself because I didn't plan on being here. I miss my family. I miss this, the little things, the little stuff they said. I miss having a refrigerator. Okay. Changing diapers, he said. I had little kids, and I missed that idea of taking a bubble bath. I mean, just sitting the things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
But if you're in a situation like they are, that's a whole new perspective. And then he said, but I have learned to forgive me because I'm not the same man I was 8 years ago.
Amen.
and he himself and they've started a Bible study, in prison, and this idea of forgiving is so powerful. I want to say something here because along that same line, as I said, I did the domestic violence counseling stuff for years, and so what I want to say to the ladies here, I want to make sure that there is no misunderstanding about forgiving the person that assaulted you. For example, it says there are situations where you may forgive in a healthy way, forgive the person that assaulted you or the person that beat you in that relationship. But there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation.
Absolutely.
You see, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go back to a situation again to be violated. So I just wanted to put that out there because somebody could interpret this. They're saying I need to go back to him.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier when we were saying that just because we're forgiving each other doesn't mean we need to be in the same space. It just, it may mean that in this season we need to let each other go because we, to piggyback on what you were saying, I can forgive you, but I don't want to end up back in a toxic situation just because, I feel like I need to get over it. No, that's not the case. Because we love each other and we extend grace to each other, but we also got to love ourselves and we got to be able to, extend or walk in the wisdom of God as we interact or as we act.
Mm-hmm. So that person that, let's just say that person that did something that they now regret, even the men who assaulted their wives. I mean, and now they really regret it. They realize what it cost them. They realize what happened, if there was infidelity, and now, they want forgiveness. And the end of the day is because they don't get it. And this kind of brings the next question comes up. Is it possible to forgive without ever receiving an apology?
I think so, and I think the ability to do so depends on the person. But I don't think that now. I want to be sure that I'm completely clear on this. I'm not saying that apology is not necessary. What I am saying is that as a person who may have been done wrong, if you don't receive an apology, forgiveness shouldn't be dependent on that apology.
Right.
Now, if we're talking about amending or we're talking about, getting closure on some things, that's a different discussion. But I don't think forgiveness should be dependent on the apology because I'm going to go back to something you said when we first started. Forgiveness is as much about you as it is about the other person. And so if I don't ever get an apology from that person, if I'm not able to forgive because they never apologized, then I'm just holding myself captive. I'm holding myself hostage. Mm-hmm. And I'm not willing to hold myself hostage because I'm waiting for you to acknowledge what it is that you did or waiting for you to acknowledge how things went down between us. Forgiveness in that sense has to be about me moving on, me freeing myself from the prison or the bondage that would come with being bitter towards you. And if apology comes, it comes. And then, along the way, we've talked about apologies being insincere. So, even if you get an apology, the apology may or may not be sincere. And if your forgiveness is dependent on that apology and you just get a lip service apology, then you really haven't gotten what you need based on that. So I think it has to be, forgiveness has to be from the heart, and it has to be based on our personal need to be able to move on with life and not allow grudges and bitterness to hold us captive to all the things that would keep us from being prosperous in our own lives.
That is so true, because if I'm here waiting on an apology that never comes, and I say I'm holding my breath, how long can I hold my breath waiting on that apology?
Yeah.
It may never come. That's like waiting at a bus station for a train to come, and they have moved the bus. I'm waiting at the bus station for a train to come. It ain't gonna come. because it's the wrong location. And
Never
so
gonna happen.
it's never going to happen. And because it doesn't happen doesn't mean I can't forgive and still move on,
Yeah.
and the idea of being able to be okay with that. Because like you said, closure, there are a lot of people, I know they want closure, but guess what? I believe sometimes this is where my creator can help bring the closure because nobody can
Amen.
close like him. He's a great opener and closer.
Amen.
Okay. And to
Amen.
be able to seek higher power for that because there are so many people still angry with people who've dead and gone on. He never apologized.
And that's an important point. Suppose they pass away and you don't get that apology. Are you still holding on? Are you hoping that you're gonna meet up with them in the afterlife or something? That's not realistic. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and that's why so many times therapy is so important to help people to process through those things, and because it is
Yeah.
so real, and there's so many people struggling with that, and my whole thing is you can't drink enough Jack or Daniel or Hen or C, you can't none of that. You can't smoke enough weed. You can't do that, which so many people try to medicate. You can't be in different relationships, enough relationships to try to ease that pain that you've had about this unforgiveness and all those things. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Have you ever waken up in the morning feeling sluggish, wishing you had an edge? You need the healthy edge, and that starts with your gut. Your gut does more than just digest food. It runs the show. It supports your immune system, fuels your energy, balances your mood, and keeps your body performing at its best. But stress, processed foods, lack of sleep, environmental toxins, they can throw your gut microbiome completely off track. Maybe you notice that sluggishness, the foggy thinking, unpredictable digestion, or just feeling off. That's your body talking to you. It's telling you to get P84. 84 fruits and vegetables grown naturally in organic environments all over the world designed to detox the body, provide all the minerals and supplements needed for a healthy, strong body and gut. Whether you're 8 or 88 years of age, we all have a gut microbiome. That's why so many people are discovering the difference with P84, a breakthrough formula designed to support gut microbiome health in a whole new way. P84 works in your body, not against it. It nourishes good bacteria, supports digestive balance, and helps strengthen your gut lining so that your system can function the way it was built to. The result? A healthier, more resilient microbiome. Your body functions for its wellness. People everywhere are sharing their stories. More energy, better digestion, improved mood, clearer thinking, and a renewed sense of vitality. This is not a quick fix. It is not a fad. It is real science working at the cellular level, supporting your body's natural ability to repair, restore, and thrive. So if you're tired of feeling like your body is running low in gear, if you're ready to take the change and charge into a better digestive system, your energy, your long-term wellness, start with P84. And the second part is Protandem. What is Protandem? Protandem is a scientific research formula designed to help your body fight oxidative stress, supports a healthy microbiome as well, and strengthens your natural pathway to feeling better. Imagine waking up clearer. With your gut supported, everything feels different. Real people seeing real changes, more digestive comfort, better focus, greater sense of well-being. Because Botanum doesn't mask symptoms, it supports the body's cellular system. So if you're ready to take control of your health inside out of your gut, start with Protandem and P84, the Healthy Edge Pack. Simply go to mauricemcdonald.net. mauricemcdonald.net. That's MAURICE.net. RICE.net, and get yours today in your system. Okay, we're back. We're back here on the It's About You radio show, WDRBmedia.com. Guys, listen, this show has gone by so quickly. So now I want to get some information about Pastor Wilkins. If you would, how many books have you written?
Three. I just released my third one in September.
And what was the name of your first book?
My first book was entitled "As He Speaks to Me." It's about applying Scripture to the way that we handle our lives. My second book was entitled "What Makes Me a Man," and it's just about scriptural application. All of it about the scriptural application to life, but it's about how we deal with things as men and how we interact with women, and also there's a little bit in there about helping women to maybe understand or develop an understanding of how we interact with each other, all based on Scripture. And my most recent release, just released this past September, is called "Marriage for Real." And again, it's a scriptural application to marriage, and it's about helping people to navigate through marriage from a scriptural perspective.
I believe you had told me before that you always grew up writing and you just started putting notes down, and I guess, as you said, that first title, "As He Speaks to Me," right? So I realized that you're taking everything from the Bible and how God communicates with you to put it on paper. So those, I love those titles. So how can somebody get a hold of those books if they wanted to get them?
The easiest way is to go directly to my website, PastorClennieWilkins.com. And Clennie is spelled Clennie. My name is Wilkins with an I, Wilkins. I know in various places they spell it with an E, but so PastorClennieWilkins.com. If you go there, you'll find some general information about me, contact information, and you'll find links that take you to Amazon to order those books. You can go directly to Amazon and Google. Go directly to Amazon and search for Pastor Clennie Wilkins, and they'll come up that way too. But you can go to the website, and that's probably the most direct way.
And that's PastorClennieWilkins.com.
Yes.
And that is important that you all, you see that, go out and get the book. I absolutely could go get the book and read them. They're good reads. And number one, it's someone who's genuine, sharing this information, man of God who's sharing this, designed to help people grow. Because we've been talking about forgiveness now, and a lot of time, ladies, understand how men think. If you got that book, learn about from a biblical standpoint, what makes me a man. Understand, because many times women don't understand men. Why does he do this and why does he do that thing? So there's so many things we learn as a child that carries over to our manhood. Be tough, don't cry, all those kind of things that we share. So, but I think it's a good idea to get your hands on the books itself to help that. Listen, this topic today, we've been talking about forgiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joined us or you missed the gem, one thing I would definitely say is that you can, my show, you'll be able to hear it again, listen to it again. You can follow me on my YouTube channel, It's About You Radio. It's About You. It's About You. You can see that there on the YouTube channel. You also get a chance, you can reach out to me any way you can for sure. But definitely you can follow me on Facebook, of course, as Maurice McDonald. But at the end of the day, reaching out and sharing this information is what I love to do, have different guests. You can reach out to me on Instagram as well, Maurice McDonald 51. You'll see me there, and this show has really been exciting today to talking more and more about this forgiveness, because it is real to do that. So with that said, thank you so much, Pastor Wilkins, and of course I refer you as your Pastor Wilkins, but affectionately known as cousin, because that's what we are. And so I thank you, and we're gonna have to follow up with some more shows. I know there's some more topics that we need to talk about here to help people to grow and to be better and to walk in the purpose that they have. So I look forward to doing another show with you.
Thank you. And I thank you for the opportunity to share with your listeners and to be a part of your presentation. So we wish you Godspeed as you continue to move forward.
Thank you so much. Hey, guys, listen, that's a wrap for the show today. Listen, we'll be back next Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the It's About You radio show on WDRB Media, because we're going to be in the building.